So I studied with Phil Black in the early 1980s when Phil had a studio on 50th and Broadway. I was in my late teens, a recent ballerina reject, when I first climbed the stairs past the red flashing light of the porn house on the first landing and up to the third floor. Undernourished from my ballet days and wearing 2 braids, Dorothy style, I looked to be all of about 12 with a naivety to match. This was me from back then. The dime dance was the first clue I wasn't in Kansas of ballet land anymore. This was the pulsing jazz center of Manhattan, the Oz of the musical theater world. And Phil Black, standing in the center of his spacious studio with its windows overlooking Broadway, beating emphatically on his drum, was without a doubt the wizard himself. To say I was overdressed in my layers of sweats, leg warmers, oversized t-shirts, and flat lace-up shoes is an understatement. The other women strutted in their heels, stockings, and briefs with their midriffs showing, their hair wild and loose. I always think of Debbie Hahn when I read this. And their lips shiny and painted ruby. It was as if they had come from the burlesque show on the first floor. And I put on 3 extra sweatshirts. One day, after about a year, Phil called me over after class. This was not good. It usually meant you were going to be yelled at, but Phil was somewhat gentle with me on this day. "Listen to me, kid," he said. "You're not a bad dancer, but you've got to do something about the way you look. Take off all those paper bags or whatever it is that you're calling clothes. Fix your hair, get yourself a nice pair of heels, and try a little makeup. Otherwise, kid, you're never going to get a job in New York City." And pretty much like everything Phil said, these were painful words of wisdom. And they helped me to eventually grow into myself. Ultimately, they helped me to get a job on Broadway in Cats. I think back about this man, this wizard, and sometimes I wonder what kept us all, his devoted regulars, coming back day after day, year after year. It wasn't the coddling. Phil was a proponent of tough love. When someone's dancing offended Phil, his anger would unleash like a tornado. First, the drumstick would come flying across the room, aimed strategically at whoever it was who had done a pencil turn with their legs just a millimeter apart, and causing everyone to duck as if it were choreographed. Sometimes Phil himself would charge at you, his hand wide open, ready to smack you on the side of the head or on the arm if you blocked, which was a bad idea because he just hit you twice. But even worse than the physical attacks were the words. "What's that thing Phil used to call you when he was mad?" my mother asked me the other day. "It was a flower. I remember. It was a dandelion." "No," I said, "it was daffodil. He used to say, 'You're a daffodil.'" And only Phil could make that word sting like it was the lowest of low things that you could possibly be. And then there were the muttered words of disgust said under his breath, and the final indignity when Phil would stop the dance combination and point his drumstick at you. "Get out of here," he would yell, motioning with his drumstick for you to go to the last line. You waving at the person in the back, down front. And yet, we loved Phil. Even more, we worshipped him. Week after week, we couldn't get enough. We even hungered for the cruelty. Why? Because we knew. Because somehow, in his magical way, Phil communicated to us his underlying faith in our ability. Phil had uncompromising faith in our ability to do better, much better, than we ever thought we could. And Phil made this happen with each passing class. He brought out the best dancer in each one of us, and he brought out the best person too. Most importantly, Phil knew from experience that show business, like life itself, was not for the meek. He knew that in order to go from audition to audition without losing heart, you had to be thick-skinned, otherwise you'd be chewed up and spit out. And if you could survive Phil's class, well then, you could survive just about anything. And so there was only one thing worse than Phil's biting words. No words at all. No words meant that you weren't worth the time or the energy that it took to throw a stick or give a criticism to. No words didn't mean you were getting off easy. It meant that you weren't being watched. And what we each wanted more than anything was to learn from a master, to earn the attention and respect of the wonderful wizard, and to please this man who was so very hard to please. And that's why we came every day, week and year, and we're happy to be there. Maybe dreams could come true. And for many of us, with Phil's help, they did. And for all of us, we were better, stronger, and wiser people, not just in the world of dance, but in all the areas of our life, as a result of the time that we spent with a man, small in stature, but larger than life, with a booming voice, a drumstick in hand, and the power to grant wishes to those brave and lucky enough to wander up the stairs and into his heart. I thank you, Phil, we all do, for your guidance and for your greatness.